Mr. Speaker, thank you for the recognition to speak tonight. Before I begin, I ask for unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to submit extraneous material into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. I rise today to speak about Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, and the deadly and devastating consequences of their illegal actions, which will reverberate long after they are gone. And the theme of today's special order hour is that the Musk is gone, but the stench remains. Elon Musk supposedly has left the federal government. I just want to remind people that when President Trump issued his executive order creating the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, and appointing Elon Musk in the role related to DOGE, DOGE was created as a temporary organization, and Elon Musk was appointed as a special government employee, and this was to avoid having any kind of Senate confirmation of either this congressional creation of the agency or any confirmation of Elon Musk. And I want to remind folks that this entire time that Elon Musk was in office or as a federal employee, he was in fact exercising powers that were far greater than any special government employee would be allowed to have, exercising powers that would be at the highest levels of government, higher than an agency or department head, and in fact exerting powers that even the president himself does not hold. He violated the law every single day he was in Congress. He violated the law every single day he was a special government employee. DOGE employees continue to remain today. So even though Elon Musk is gone, there are something like 100 or more DOGE special governmental employees and other employees scattered around the federal government that are in position to continue the wreckage that Elon Musk created. Now, I know that Elon Musk and Donald Trump have created a lot of news with their catfighting earlier today, but I just want to remind folks again that the damage Elon Musk did is going to take a long time to repair, and what he did essentially was try to upend the Constitution. Elon Musk, as a special government employee, purported to be able to undo acts of Congress, to illegally impound funds that Congress had appropriated, to undo laws we had created, to undo agencies we'd created. And there's a long list of stuff that he did, that DOGE did, including illegally deleting or ending the Department of Education, ditto with the U.S. AID, the U.S. Institute for Peace, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Importantly, most of these were institutions created through acts of Congress, funded with appropriations authorized by Congress, and even my children know that the Constitution is clear on this point. Congress, and only Congress, has the power to enact laws. Congress, and only Congress, has the power to appropriate funds. It's very clear in our Article I authorities. And so the president does not have the authority to try to undo our laws or to impound funds that we've appropriated. And certainly a special government employee like Elon Musk does not have that authority. And so this was about a core tenet of the Constitution of the United States that every single one of us in Congress swears to support and defend when we take office. And yet too many on the other side of the aisle during this entire time pretended like this wasn't happening, pretended like Elon Musk was not violating the law every single day. So now he's apparently gone from the federal government, but the mass amount of wreckage that he did during his time with DOGE is something that we're going to have to analyze and understand, because there's been a complete lack of oversight from Congress, including from the Oversight Committee that I sit on, over these past few months. There have been reports that Elon Musk and DOGE were given complete God-level access to the federal government's top systems, including private and sensitive data for all Americans, classified information, budget information, payment systems, etc. From a conflict of interest standpoint, Elon Musk has vacuumed up many billions of dollars in federal contracts for his companies and enriched himself. Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink have all profited under Musk's time as a federal employee. At the same time, he went out of his way to kill several enforcement actions that were underway by different federal agencies against his businesses, allowing his companies and himself to evade oversight. He was able to help place key personnel in agencies that now are looking to benefit his companies financially. Going back to the data privacy point, Elon Musk and DOGE have allegedly used Musk's AI chatbot, Grok, within federal agencies. This model has likely been trained on non-public data by incompetent Doge workers, and Doge has also sought access to sensitive government data for millions and millions of Americans, likely violating the Privacy Act of 1974 repeatedly. This is not just a matter of our information being out there, potentially being used by Musk's AI systems in violation of all laws. It's also a major national security concern. Bad actors will now have a much easier time siphoning off U.S. data due to the cybersecurity vulnerabilities that Elon Musk has created. Now, earlier this morning, the Oversight Committee held a hearing on how artificial intelligence has been integrated into the federal government by Elon Musk and Doge. Entrusting Doge with our personal data is not only a terrifying thought, but one that will have terrible consequences for Americans throughout the country. Trying to automate the federal government through AI without a true plan or any data privacy safeguards, while firing ad hoc and haphazardly many of the technology support workers who understood those systems, is going to have a massive negative impact on Americans. And I see here that I have here with me a fellow member. I'll concede in just a few moments, but just wanted to continue by saying that many of my constituents right now are complaining about some of the effects we're already seeing from the haphazard and, again, illegal cuts to personnel made by Elon Musk and Doge, including many who are complaining now that they are having difficulty accessing their Social Security benefits because of the mass cuts in SSA. These are real people that are not getting their benefits. They can't get anyone on the phone when they try to call Social Security. And the reality is that Elon Musk, again, illegally fired a bunch of workers, even though he had no such authority to do so. And again, I want to emphasize that this body, Congress, has refused to engage in any oversight to date over Elon Musk. And the only reason that we may be about to do some right now is because Elon Musk apparently is in a tit-for-tat with Donald Trump. And so I suspect some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will finally wake up to some of the wrongdoing, some of the illegal actions that Elon Musk has been engaged in since January 20th. I also want to point out that this has never been about waste, fraud, and abuse, certainly never been about efficiency. You don't eliminate entire agencies and departments, as Elon Musk has done. You don't get rid of 50% of the personnel at Social Security or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency if you're simply trying to improve efficiency and get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. This was always about finding enough cuts to try to partially pay for the massive $7 trillion tax cut for billionaires that House Republicans and Donald Trump and Senate Republicans want to pass right now. That is what this is about. And so there was a slash and burn attitude to firing many thousands of federal employees. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees they've attempted to fire, including those at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Department of Labor, and other critical agencies. And we've seen this firing be so haphazard that they've had to hire some of them back, including the decision to fire all the National Nuclear Security Administration personnel responsible for overseeing our U.S. nuclear weapons stockpile, and then having to rehire them once they realized who they'd actually fired. Firing key scientists, pandemic experts as well, and repeatedly miscalculating and misrepresenting the savings that Doge cuts had made to our budget. They've also made the federal government much more bureaucratic and less efficient. I have a burgeoning life sciences industry in my district, lots of companies doing medical devices, innovative drugs, and they have all reported to me that they're deeply concerned about the massive cuts to the Federal Drug Administration, or Food and Drug Administration, because those cuts mean that they can't get anyone on the phone, they can't find people to try to approve their drugs and devices, and that this has created additional red tape and hurdles that have just made it very difficult. A lot of uncertainty right now, and these are companies that, again, are creating thousands and thousands of jobs, providing billions of dollars in collective impact to the Southern California area, and we're seeing this story writ large across the board right now. With that, I want to yield. I guess I will not yield just yet to my colleague, but I want to talk some more about the enormity of Doge's illegal cuts as well as how they fared in the legal system. Since Doge was stood up by President Trump and Elon Musk, it has cut something like $6.5 billion for the U.S. Agency for International Development, $502 million for the Department of Education, $232 million from the Social Security Administration, $192 million from the General Services Administration, $173 million from the Department of Agriculture, $152 million from the Department of Health and Human Services, $133 million from the Department of Transportation, $119 million from the Department of Commerce. Now, again, these were not, we didn't have any transparency into what these cuts were justified on, what they were meant to do. These were in addition to the attempts to shutter USAID, the Department of Education, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the U.S. Institute for Peace, and many other critical agencies, departments, and programs. And I will note that the courts have continued to find that these cuts were by and large illegal, that Elon Musk did not have any authority to undo acts of Congress, that Congress and only Congress can shut down agencies that we've created. Congress and only Congress can defund agencies from funds that we had previously appropriated. But with that, I see my colleague, Congresswoman Stansbury, here, and so I will yield to the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee's Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency, Ms. Stansbury.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you to Mr. Min for convening this special order hour. And as we're getting set up here, I know that we've got a poster that we want to get up here. So let me just start out. Do we have a poster here? Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Well, Mr. Speaker, breakups are hard. They're really, really hard. And, you know, they're especially hard when they play out in the public eye. And I think anyone would understand that who is online right now and watching the very public breakup of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I mean, if you've watched over the last several days, it's really been an epic breakup for the ages. In fact, I think it's fit for the Real Housewives if you've been watching what's unfolded, even just in the last several hours. In fact, just a couple of hours ago, Elon Musk affirmed a statement about actually impeaching the president. I mean, who would have thought that we'd end up here? Because literally less than a week ago, they were having a bromance in the Oval Office. So it's really just incredible to think about what's happened over the last 72 hours when you think about it. But I think it's important to understand, I mean, you know, Donald Trump is in office as the most powerful human on planet Earth as the president of the United States. And rather than thinking about balancing the budget, addressing economic freefall, trying to figure out what to do with our foreign adversaries, how to help you, the American people, engaging on the debate on how to save health care for millions of Americans, or making sure our children are fed in the United States and across the world. Instead, he's been so embroiled in the breakup of his bromance with Elon Musk, they've been going hard at each other all day long. So I wanted to take this opportunity while we had it, honestly, to share the tea with all of you. Because I think, I mean, we all kind of knew this was coming, right? I mean, we've kind of seen the signs for the last few days, especially the last few weeks. But I don't think that many of us thought it would come in such a dramatic form. So I want to kind of break down and put in the congressional record what's actually transpired over the last 72 hours. Now, I think many of us were shocked when we saw just a couple of days ago when on Tuesday at 1:30, Elon Musk tweeted the following. He said, "I'm sorry. But I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those of you who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." I mean, really, we were quite shocked. I mean, let's be clear. All 215 Democrats have been saying this for weeks, but obviously things really boiled over for Mr. Musk on Tuesday. Then, just a few minutes later, he followed up with another shot at Donald Trump where he says, It will massively increase the already gigantic budget deficit to 2.5 trillion, exclamation point, and burden America's citizens with crushing, unsustainable debt. He went on in the following hours to literally accuse Republicans of making Americans debt slaves. I mean, this is actually what's been unfolding on the internet for the last several days. But this bromance is so messy, you guys. Like, this breakup is messy as all hell, let me tell you. So, okay, y'all know that Thomas Massie, who is a true fiscal conservative, who is pretty much the only Republican in this chamber who stands by his convictions and is not willing to sell out his soul for politics and power, voted against this bill because he read the CBO report and he was not going to go and toe the line for the Republican Party. He knew that Speaker Johnson was not telling the truth about deficit spending. He knew that Donald Trump and his sales pitch was not selling the truth. He knew it was going to cost $2.5 trillion at least. We don't even know what the final cost is going to be. But this love triangle got even messier because both Thomas Massie and Senator Rand Paul got in on the mess here. So we have Thomas Massie here retweeted Elon Musk, and he says, he's right. And we saw just around that same time frame, Senator Rand Paul also got involved. But then, oh my gosh, well, Elon Musk, in a fit of passion, I'm sure, I mean, he dialed it up even further. And he said later in the day here, it looks like it was about 3:32 p.m. on X, it looks like Elon Musk was retweeting what other people were saying about his attacks on the president and this big abomination of a bill. And Elon Musk says, in November of next year, we fire all politicians who betrayed the American people. I mean, you guys, we cannot make this up. This is like the real tea that is going on the internet. So, you know, Elon Musk, he dumped almost $300 million on Donald Trump's election, and he even weighed in and was like, yo, bro, you wouldn't even be president and wouldn't have the majority if I hadn't dropped all my dollars on you. And then Elon Musk, this was yesterday afternoon, because this went on all night, right? Like, we were all watching it unfold in real time. And even just a couple hours ago here on this floor, we were all like glued to our phones. We're like, oh man, this lovers quarrel is getting messy. And Elon Musk, around 2:50 p.m. yesterday afternoon, we were in the Doge subcommittee when it happened. He tweeted this. Elon Musk tweets, call your senator, call your congressman. Bankrupting America is, all caps, not okay. Kill the bill. And, you know, I appreciate I'm a 90s kid. He also tweeted a picture of Kill Bill, Quentin Tarantino reference. You know, we all know where you're coming from, Elon. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not a fan. I think we all know that. We've tried to subpoena you several times to come testify in front of the Oversight Committee. You've been giving yourself billions of dollars in contracts. You've been stealing American data. You've been breaking the law with impunity. You know, a couple of people asked me earlier how I felt about what was going on in this lovers quarrel, and I'm like, you know what? Like, you get mixed up with messy people, you get a messy outcome, and it's very clear that that's exactly what's going on. Now, I think we've all been hearing the rumors here in Washington, the breakup rumors. In fact, I think many of us, even on this floor, on both the Democratic and the Republican side, have heard the rumors that Donald Trump was getting frustrated with Elon, that he wanted to be on the helicopter all the time. And, you know, he was like following him around, going to Mar-a-Lago, and showing up to these cabinet meetings and throwing all his money around and all that stuff. And in fact, in response to all the drama, Donald Trump fired back on Truth Social. Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do, exclamation point. And he just went, all caps, crazy. I mean, you guys, this is getting out of hand. This is really, really, really getting out of hand. So then Donald Trump, I mean, really, this is just the, tip of the iceberg, because what else does like the leader of the free world have to do all day? I mean, he could try to end wars in the Middle East. He could try to negotiate peace deals in Europe. Oh, wait, no, actually, he's cutting funding for NATO. Sorry, I forgot about that. But in fact, he just spent his entire day attacking his aggrieved lover. So Donald Trump, let's see here. This is June 5th at 2:37 on Truth Social, says, the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. I mean, there's not a lot that Mr. Trump and I agree on, but I mean, I'm totally with you, Mr. President. If you want to go after Elon Musk's contracts, like, we are here for the fight, bro. Like, give me a ring, like, for real. We can get this across the finish line because, I mean, obviously, I know you guys were feeling like the feelings for the first 130 days, and there's always like a honeymoon period, especially after you go through a big thing together, like an election. And I know he helped you win your election, but obviously now the honeymoon is worn off. But I mean, if you really want to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, I mean, even Donald Trump is saying it, you guys. I mean, Donald Trump apparently even this week asked his own staff if the entire Doge effort was bullshit. And I'm not trying, I know we're on the floor of the House of Representatives, so to all of you monitoring, that's a direct quote of the President of the United States. Let me just be clear on that. But yeah, I mean, obviously Donald Trump, I mean, these guys know a lot about each other. They've spent a lot of time with each other over the last few months. So, I mean, they actually know what's going on. But the battle continued today. In response to Donald Trump's comments about Elon wearing thin, someone, the Autism Capital account, I don't know quite what that is, says, Trump fires back at Elon, the online battle begins, popcorn emoji. And Elon Musk says, such an obvious lie, so sad. I mean, we're all sad, right? Like, it's always sad when a relationship ends. But I think this is when things really got heated. And this is why things are really hard when you're having a breakup and there's a love triangle with the GOP, these guys over here. I mean, there's nobody here anymore, just in case you're wondering. No Republicans except for the acting pro tem here. But the thing that's so crazy, right? We all get wrapped up in our friends and their relationships, and the Republicans were like, okay, Mr. Trump, Elon's obviously your bestie, and he spent all this money, so we'll go along with it, even though apparently the cabinet and Republicans were really unhappy about it. And they're like, okay, fine. But then, we're going scorched earth here now. And it was actually really interesting to me earlier here on the House floor, because I was like, well, how are Republicans dealing with it? Honestly, I haven't seen you guys cheerful in quite a few months. So clearly something's about to happen. So Elon Musk, where are we at here on the time frame here? This was actually shortly before I came to the floor this afternoon. Tweets, time to drop the really big bomb at real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. And then he says cheerfully, have a nice day, Donald Trump. I mean, we all know what happens in breakups. But obviously, you guys, they got the tea on each other. And this is a no holds bar breakup fight happening right now. But finally, this was the mic drop of all mic drops. Just as I was walking onto the floor this afternoon, Elon Musk tweets, yes, in response to some other person who I don't know, who tweeted, President versus Elon, who wins? Trump should be impeached. Now, we've all been through really hard breakups, but I don't know if you guys remember, but like 140 days ago or so, like it was a love fest. They were here in the Capitol. It was so good. Elon Musk was like, yo, President, I'm going to like save the government from debt slavery, which is his words, and the deficit. And like these bros were on the helicopter every day. They're going down to Mar-a-Lago. And now Elon Musk is calling for the frickin' impeachment of Donald Trump, you guys. I mean, that is some serious, serious business. So, what does this all mean in reality? I mean, it's happening in real time. I haven't even checked my phone since I started this conversation. There might be more drama going down just since we started this very conversation on the floor. But the reality of the situation is y'all both got what you paid for. Mr. Musk, you spent almost $300 million in dark money to pay for your friend, Mr. Trump, to become the president and to win this Republican majority who is trying to send our country into the largest deficit spend in American history. And Mr. Trump, I mean, this is what happens when you sell your soul. I mean, you see what happens. So I have a lot of love in my heart for people who are going through hard times. And I know that, you know, both you guys are having a hard time. But I just have to say, for the sake of democracy, for the sake of the American people, and frankly, for the global security and safety of people all over the planet, y'all need to cut this drama out. I mean, we need to take care of our people. So I'm with Musk on this one. I don't mean to take sides, Mr. President, but I'm going to say it. Kill the bill. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Stansberry. Appreciate your comments, and it has indeed been a messy day. I think that prices are getting too high at this moment in time, but Elon Musk is, I believe, really inflating the price of popcorn right now, and that's something that is going to affect my household. I wanted to continue back to Elon Musk, because whatever side you take in this debate, we cannot forget that Elon Musk, again, repeatedly violated the law, made illegal spending cuts, tried to eliminate agencies created by Congress. This was not jaywalking. We're talking about serious crimes against the Constitution of the United States, and his actions were characterized not only by their illegality, but also by their immorality and incompetence. The three I's. And the immorality we saw as you continue to cut programs that were meant to help our poorest and most vulnerable. Called Social Security, which is a lifeline program for all the seniors around the country, including the ones in the district I represent. Called it a Ponzi scheme, and cut so much of the workforce that, again, I've had many constituents now complaining they can't get access to their benefits. They can't get anyone on the phone when there's been a mistake. This seems like deliberate in its scope, and they've been incompetent. And I mentioned some of the things they've done as far as firing the nuclear inspectors, miscalculating Doge's savings, granting a Doge staffer access to edit sensitive Treasury systems, prompting an internal forensic investigation, gutting the CFPB only to unsuspend staffers and uncancel contracts after it became apparent that CFPB could no longer perform its legally mandated functions, inadvertently canceling funding for Ebola prevention, uncanceling lease terminations after agency and congressional pushback. This could go on and on and on. But the point here is that this, again, was never about efficiency. It was never about finding waste, fraud, and abuse. That was always the big lie. What Elon Musk was trying to do was reshape government illegally against the express will of Congress. And unfortunately, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle failed to stand up to this abuse of law, this direct attack on our Constitution and our authorities. The courts, thankfully, have stepped up. And right now, the Trump administration and Doge are embroiled in over 252 lawsuits. They have lost almost all of these at various stages at the district court and appellate level, including several in the Supreme Court. And they're continuing trying to appeal. But even as this has happened, many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, rather than stand up for Congress's authorities under the Constitution, they have tried to go after judges. They have threatened judges, tried to take away some of their authority, and we saw that most recently in the big, beautiful bill, which I think Republicans are now realizing was actually a monstrosity, a Frankenstein-level monstrosity of extreme provisions that many of them did not realize were in there, such as the one in that bill that would effectively neuter the judiciary's power to hold any administration official in contempt. This provision is a little wonky, but in essence, it prohibits federal courts from enforcing contempt citations, which a judge can issue for noncompliance of a court order. Now, what this would do is effectively shield the Trump administration from wrongdoing, that no judge could enforce any penalties against the Trump administration for failing to respond to court orders, for failing to obey the Constitution or the law. And what is concerning about this is that we have found an increasing number of Republicans who are publicly admitting now they didn't realize that this provision was in the, quote, big, beautiful bill that they'd passed. And, of course, we all remember just a couple weeks back, this bill was pushed through in the dark of night after 1 a.m., and it was clear that it was rushed through so quickly that most of our colleagues did not have time to read it, did not understand what was in it, did not have time to have their staffs review what was in it. This was an unconscionable process that is leading to outrageous results. We're also seeing other examples of provisions that my Republican colleagues were not aware was in the bill. Just earlier this week, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I serve with on the Oversight Committee, noted that she did not realize that there was a 10-year moratorium on AI regulations created as part of this big, beautiful bill, and said explicitly that she would oppose it. Well, she had a chance to oppose it when the bill was on the floor, but didn't read it. I would suggest to my Republican colleagues that maybe reading the bills that we are passing is a good idea before you decide to vote for them, particularly when you are rushing it through on a partisan line vote. Now, look, I come from a legal background. I started my career turning down Wall Street to go work at the SEC to crack down on corporate fraud, to uphold the rule of law. I've continued fighting for the rule of law my whole career, including as a law professor at UC Irvine. And what we're seeing right now is deeply offensive to the rule of law. That what we saw this last election cycle was Elon Musk spending $290 million on behalf of Donald Trump and other Republican candidates. $290 million. A lot of money. But that has paid off very well. Very good return on investment for Elon Musk because his wealth has gone up $100 billion with a B since he took office. Despite all the disasters we've seen, despite the massively declining sales of Tesla, his net wealth has gone way the hell up. And that's because he uniquely, even as other spending gets cut, willy-nilly, because a 21-year-old coder named Big Balls decides to delete a line of code, Elon Musk is getting massive new government contracts, including an $8.5 billion contract for Tesla from the GSA for electric vehicles, a $2.4 billion contract for SpaceLink, which was originally meant for Verizon, but which was canceled and mysteriously then transferred over to SpaceX, which happens to be conveniently owned by Elon Musk, and on and on and on. Now, this looks like a quid pro quo. This looks like something that should not be allowed to exist, particularly when you have a man who is repeatedly, flagrantly, and knowingly violating the law every single day, upending the Constitution. And the damage to this country that we're going to see over the next several decades that we're seeing already happen right now is going to be devastating. Just earlier last week, I had a town hall at UC Irvine, which I represent. And as many people around the country are beginning to realize, a lot of what's happening right now is threatening our economic present, but also our economic future. The massive cuts to science and research funding for universities which have long been the basis for our innovation economy. Whether in California, Boston, Atlanta, around the country, we know that high-end research creates jobs. It leads to innovations, that leads to new companies. It's what has made America great over time. And yet right now, those cuts are massive. Right now we have seen NSA, NIH, and other agencies in the Trump administration illegally refuse to spend and allocate research funding that Congress has appropriated. That, in turn, has led already to the firing of many grad students of programs, innovations. But also, concerningly, we are starting to see the compounding effects of the attacks on legal immigrants here, people here on student visas. Now, you may recall that just a few weeks back, the Trump administration announced that they would be rounding up a whole posse of students who had minor run-ins with the law. In California, in the University of California system alone, there were something like 165 students here on valid student visas who'd been arrested with no due process, put into deportation proceedings. In one case, it was because they ran a stop sign. In another case, it was because they were in a domestic dispute. Their partner called the police. When the police arrived, they actually found that the immigrant, the person here on a student visa, was not the abuser, but actually probably had been abused. They decided to not proceed with this. But because there was a police report, even one that falsely accused this immigrant, that immigrant was put into deportation proceedings. Now, the Trump administration did reverse that policy after a public outcry, but we've seen foreign students, the best and brightest that have traditionally come to this country, to places like Harvard and MIT and UC San Francisco and Stanford. They are not coming here. They are going to other countries right now. And that accumulated effect is draining our future right now. We are talking about entire industries predicated on technology, on research, on life sciences, that we expect to see massive declines in 10, 15, 20 years. We are robbing our future right now, and for what, I don't know. To give Elon Musk a little bit more. So the damage is going to be incalculable across the board, but I think the biggest damage that we're going to see is to our public's trust in our institutions. Right now, we're seeing corruption on a scale we have never seen before in the history of this country. A $400 million Qatari gift of a palace in the sky to Donald Trump was just the thing that made the news. But meanwhile, he's having dinners with massive donors who are giving billions and billions of dollars to his meme coin. We're seeing bribes happen across the board. We're seeing emoluments over and over and over to the president and his family. And yes, we're seeing Elon Musk getting a ransom from the federal government as far as new contracts that has personally benefited him to no end. We have to start enforcing the rule of law in this country. As someone who has always believed in the rule of law, who stood closely side by side with our law enforcement officers, with our prosecutors, with those who are trying to uphold the rule of law in this country and the Constitution, I would urge my colleagues on the other side of the room to start thinking about that oath that we took when we took this office, to support and defend the Constitution. Those are not just words. They are the foundation of what it means to serve in Congress, of what it means to serve in the federal government, of what it means to be a patriotic American. If you are not enforcing the Constitution of the United States, if you are not enforcing the rule of law and standing up for the authorities of Congress, which is a co-equal branch of government, not a lackey of the president, what do we stand for? What are we doing here? I know that many of my colleagues on the other side are scared of Donald Trump and Elon Musk, frankly, too. But that should be no excuse for standing up and doing what is right. And we have to stand up and have an accounting of all the damage that Elon Musk did during his time at Doge, again, as a special government employee who never disclosed his conflicts of interest, who illegally exerted authority that a SGE should never have, that the President of the United States does not have. We need a real accounting of what happened, the damage that has been done, as well as all of the laws and constitutional provisions that he and every other member of Doge has done. This is the time to do it. I would urge my colleagues to actually start stepping up for the Constitution. And with that, I would yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.